It finally happened. The legendary Rep AB 5000 Zero Gap that has been my favorite bench for years, and I've recommended to people endlessly, has finally been beaten. It is no longer, in my opinion, the best bench. The whole story with this bench, the Rep AB 5000, is that when this came out, it was probably $600 US, and that's from Rep, R-E-P, a company that was known as a budget-friendly competitor to Rogue, primarily. And over the years, they've gotten a reputation for not just being budget-friendly, but also making really good stuff. And these days, if you look at like garage gym reviews or whatever else, many times, Rep is no longer taking the spot for the best budget-friendly piece of equipment. A piece of Rep equipment is actually taking the #1 spot as just the best you can buy, period. So it has established itself as a good company that makes good quality products. But this was one of the early things that really put them on the map for basically a holy crap, nobody makes a bench that's this heavy duty and this sturdy. And for a little while, it was the world's favorite bench. Every hardcore gym enthusiast, every home gym owner, this was the bench they wanted because it was the most physically heavy and just well-built, heavy-duty, stable, adjustable bench you could get. Previously, most older adjustable benches, even commercial quality benches, they just weren't as sturdy. They're sturdy enough, it wasn't dangerous, it wasn't gonna break, but when you are putting it in a flat position and you are loading it up as heavy as possible, going for a 1 rep max, when that bar comes down and then you go to reverse the direction, that pulse that goes through your body would make the bench shift just a little bit, which to other people might not seem like a big deal, but that can be the difference between getting the weight or not getting the weight. You know, finishing the rep or getting pinned by the bar. The first thing you need is stability. Everything is rooted in stability. The more stability you have, the more power you can output. This kind of changed the game in that sense. Essentially what makes this bench so great is that it has a really wide back. The height of this bench is actually competition rated. So if you're a competitive powerlifter, even a super strict competition like the IPF, and you want to train for the meet and you're only using competition approved stuff, this bench would actually do you well. Not only is it unbelievably sturdy, but it's competition width and competition height. On top of that, its name, Zero Gap, came from the fact that there is no gap between the butt pad and the back pad because it slides. When you need to adjust it, you slide it out of the way. Now it's this nice big gap and you can adjust the bench however you need. And then once it's where you need, you pull the pin, slide it back in place. And then to prevent this seat from wiggling, you can actually rotate this pin and it tightens and clamps down and locks it in place so it doesn't move anymore. They also did a lot of stuff that was just sheer bragging rights with this bench. Stuff that was honestly, even from a engineering standpoint, is completely unnecessary. It does nothing to technically make the bench do its job better, but it is absolutely just kind of a one-up to the entire industry, letting them know that they were the new guys in town. And I'll give you an example of that. If you look at the bottom of this bench, you'll notice it doesn't slide just by a hole that's been milled or drilled in the tubing and then a rail and it slides along there. It's not a UHMW sleeve sliding across square tubing like you'll see on, let's say, lower quality Smith machines and other stuff. It's not a brass bushing. They actually have twin rails and dedicated linear bearings that you'd see on a high-end commercial Smith machine. Having linear bearings and twin rails was absolutely just a flex, just saying we did it because we can. The other thing is the back. They've actually laser cut a rep and every single number right out of this stainless steel faceplate. And unlike the vast majority of adjustable benches, this will actually go all the way up to a full 90 degrees. You can raise this all the way up completely vertical, which kind of just aesthetically looks ridiculous because the overwhelming majority of benches don't go to a true 90 degrees. They stop at 85 degrees or maybe 80 or 75 even. Even the bench itself, having the 3/4 inch plywood is heavier duty than most benches. On top of that, each of the wide set plates that's bolted into that 3/4 inch plywood are 1/2 inch thick, and there's 3 of them just for the back piece, which both the thickness and the number is above average. That's then sitting on top of a dedicated 2-inch square tubing, a spine here, The spine then welded to this 1/2 inch thick adjustable spine pillar. I'm not sure what this is actually called, but all of it heavy duty. That is then anchored by solid steel pin that has twin bearings on either side. Again, totally unnecessary, but it was an absolute flex. And then if all that wasn't enough and this 4-inch wide spine wasn't enough down here, all that heavy duty on top of an additional really heavy duty base and then a wide back, triple foot down there. It's got this small little vertical piece of 2-inch square tubing, just so it technically has direct vertical support underneath the head of this bench. The downside, the reason why it fell out of favor in the industry, is because it's slow. Now, if I want to put it into an incline position or shoulder press, anything else basically, anything other than flat bench, I have to first loosen this nut so that it's adjustable. Once that's loosened, I then pull the pin and slide it down. Once it's slid down, I can then come back here, pull this pin, raise it to wherever I want, let's say 45 degrees, it's a good halfway point. Once that's done, I come back to the foot, or to the butt here, pull the pin, adjust it, unless of course I want to raise this, in which case pull this pin, raise it up. And as you can see, one of the other benefits is that this has a full 45-degree angle on the butt plate, which is also very, very uncommon with most adjustable benches. But even once it's there, I have to pull this pin, click it in place, and now I tighten this. And then as soon as I'm done with that exercise, if it's the only bench I have in my gym, in my home gym, I have to go through the reverse process and undo all of that. And if, God forbid, I have to move it somewhere else in the gym, well, then I run into the second problem. All of this steel, while it was a huge flex, having this many different layers of steel means that this thing is incredibly heavy. I haven't actually weighed it. I know for sure it weighs over 50 kilograms, over 110 pounds, but all of the steel, aside from having a large diameter, it's also very thick. Even again, all of the joining plates where it's bolted together, 1/2 inch thick plates. It's got heavy duty hardware to bolt it together. It has all these fancy little stainless steel name plates and face plates on every single thing. Here and here, a little rep thing here, a zero gap here. It's got this handle that sticks out to make it easier to lift. It has these twin rails. It has linear bearings. It has double bearings back here. It has this spine plus all these plates, plus the thick heavy duty back. I mean, there are so many different layers upon layers upon layers that this thing ends up just being monstrously heavy. And then I found this bench. This one is a popular bench here in Taiwan. This has been the only bench I have found that actually gives me the best of both worlds. It has a few downsides, but I'll show you how to fix them. So this bench is a traditional ladder style bench. A lot of adjustable benches are like this. You raise it, and when it's as high as you want, let it go and it catches. Fast, easy, no effort. That's why people like this style. The problem is, most companies, again, the overwhelming majority of companies that do this style of bench, although they are physically strong and they're not going to break, it's fine, they're not overwhelmingly sturdy. These are the benches that are notorious for the fact that they have a little bit of shift, a little bit of wobble when it's under really heavy loads. But this company seems to have solved most of those problems. I'm going to show you what I mean. Unlike most ladder style benches, this one is not made of 2-inch square tubing or even 3-inch square tubing. This one has the exact same 4-inch wide rectangular tubing that the Rep AB5000 has. Second, unlike most of these ladder style benches, this has a separate vertical column here that directly supports under the head of the bench. Some of them do, but a lot of them don't. It took that cue directly from the Rep AB5000. But to one up it, the vertical column here, this is 2-inch square tubing. This is the exact same 4-inch rectangular tubing that's in the rest of the assembly. Once again, whereas this one does have the 4-inch square tubing as the primary frame, 4-inch rectangular tubing, the separate piece of square tubing that's directly attached to the back of the back pad is 2-inch square tubing, and they basically sit on top of each other. The square tubing that's attached directly to the back of this back pad is the exact same 4-inch wide square tubing that you see rectangular tubing you see here at the base. So it's 4 inches, 4 inches. So again, they've actually one-upped the Rep AB 5000. On top of that, as wide as these feet are here, this one is about 50% wider, has a way wider stance. Not only here with the square tubing, which again, the feet here are 3-inch square, 3-inch rectangular. On this one, the feet, the same 4-inch rectangular tubing. So this is bigger and heavier duty than this. It's also wider, and if that wasn't wide enough, the base plate that actually has contact with the ground is about 1/2 inch thick, and it goes out even wider still. As you'll notice with this one, there is no separate base plate. The thing that makes contact with the ground is the bottom of this rubber tube cap. This one, it's an actual dedicated, very wide, probably 6-inch wide by 4-inch or 5-inch piece of 1/2 inch steel plate. So everything there is overbuilt and one-ups the Rep AB 5000. On top of that, they have used bearings and bushings in the rotation of this ladder bar. Not only that, but they didn't make it just barely wide enough so that it can go around this 4-inch square tubing. It's actually outset even wider. Because again, it's all about lateral stability. So the back here is even wider than the square tubing, the rectangular tubing itself, which gives it a much wider purchase and resists lateral torsion even more than the single point pin select of the Rep AB 5000. It has the exact same 1/2 inch thick plate that supports the back itself. It has the same super dense padding in here, the same 3/4 inch plywood base for the back pad and the butt pad. Some of the advantages though, again, moving on to this stuff, is that it is slightly narrower than this. So this one is about 12 inches wide. This I think is 10.5 inches wide. I have to actually measure for sure. This is still wide enough that it gives you all the support and keeps you very, very stable. But being slightly narrower, it's more universal. It's gonna fit more people better. This one also has this enormous butt pad. It's almost a little too big. As you noticed when I raised it up in the 45-degree position, it stuck out a ton. Whereas this one is actually a very small, very sleek butt pad that fits way more people, and even for me, it's just way more comfortable. Now the downside is you don't have this zero gap technology. This one has a big gap right here. Along with that, the next downside, I told you most adjustable benches don't go a full 90 degrees on the back, and the butt pad doesn't go up a full 45 degrees. This unfortunately is one of those. It's the number one downside. If I put this all the way in its top incline position, this is like 25 degrees, maybe 30. I have to check for sure, but it's not as impressive or high as the 45-degree angle of this one. So you can see that's quite the difference. And that could make a difference in how well it locks you in place. Aside from that, the back pad does not go to a full 90 degrees. If I go all the way up, that's probably 80 degrees, maybe 85. In comparison, 90 degrees. However, for the sake of argument, if I wanted this to go 90 degrees, I could just modify this. I could shift the ladders up a little bit by drilling different holes. I could weld an additional tab. It has the room to go 90 degrees. It just doesn't have the adjustment on the ladder rack, but that's an easy enough thing to fix. This has the ability, it has the room that I could raise it up all the way to 90 degrees if I wanted to. It could be right there, which is 45 degrees. Actually, it might be 50 degrees. I would just need to modify this. Now you'll notice it's loose because I already removed it, because I already modified it. I just made these out of some flat bar I had as a leftover material in my workshop. These are the exact same size and shape adjustments that came on it from the factory, except instead of only 2, there are 2 more. So I have 2 more additional incline positions. You can see that I can now go all the way up to that full 45 degrees. Now, why I said that this has dethroned my AB 5000 is because despite the fact that this thing is so overbuilt, it has way more physical material in it, due to a few ingenious little things like using the same super wide rectangular tubing where it's necessary and skipping additional things like linear bearings and things like that that it doesn't need. The back pad and everything else is the same. but the footprint on the floor is smaller. It's way lighter, maybe around 40 kilograms, or a little bit less. It's actually more stable because not only are the feet up here set out wider, but unlike the rep, that lateral stability is heavily dependent on the fact that it's balancing on a single center pin. That super wide ladder style means that it has a rail on both sides that are very wide set that are preventing it from having that lateral torsion. They figured out how to take all of the best attributes of this, the oversized square tubing, the super thick plates, denser back pad, the thicker wood in here, the bearings, the bushings, all that stuff, strip away everything that wasn't necessary, like that zero gap slide, the triple foot down there. And the result was a lighter bench that is faster and easier to adjust and is actually more stable, which I never thought I'd see. This is now my new favorite bench. I'll probably keep both of them because I can just keep this set up in one station of the gym, like in a Smith machine or something else, and I won't have to mess with it anymore. But honestly, if I was starting over from day one, I would probably just have this bench. I wish I knew about it sooner. It's also cheaper than this one because, again, less material, less bragging rights. Even this thing these days is on sale for $450. This one is $400 normal price. At this point, I'm going to be redundant. I'm going to start repeating myself, but I'm going to go ahead and put my new plates that I made. I'm going to actually bolt those down so it's nice and sturdy. I'm going to get to my workout that I have to do after this. I'm going to go on with my day. But I did want to say, although I am not an elitist when it comes to gym equipment, I'm definitely a big advocate that cheap equipment, DIY equipment, all that stuff is totally fine. Nearly everything in a gym doesn't have to be as nice as it is, except the bench. Nobody should ever have a cheap bench. That's the one area where you should splurge, save your money, just have a good bench. Everything else can be crap. It doesn't matter. It's good enough, but you need a good bench. And the new king of benches for 2024 is this Metcon. You still can't go wrong with this. You might still want to buy this for all the pros that I listed, but if you don't like the downsides of this and you just wished there was something that was just as sturdy and stable, this is the way to go. Which, by the way, quick little funny thing, who knows what the actual load capacity of this thing truly really is, but it's listed generically as 500 kilograms. Maybe as a below the table middle finger, maybe as a way of just kind of one-upping them. On the website for this bench, the official weight capacity for this bench is listed as 600 kilograms. This thing has beautiful welds. This looks like they were stacking dimes. Like, this looks like a legit good welder did this by hand. The weld quality on this bench is also way better than the weld quality on this bench. All right, I've talked enough. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you later, and bye.